Ladies and gentlemen, hey, you fellas, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the must-own wide receivers, and I got 3 wide receivers I just can't stop drafting, and a lot of underdog drafts and a lot of mocks on Sleeper, wherever I'm at, getting these guys. My rankings have them around maybe 2, in some cases 3 rounds ahead of what the consensus ADP is. I don't have to take them there, but I just find myself getting them often. So 3 wide receivers and 2 honorable mentions that I think are going to be, they're rookies, a lot of upside for you. So let's start this bad boy off, and let's do it right about now. Thank you for being here. If you liked the video at some point, why not hit that little like button? Helps the channel. So let's start off with my first must-own wide receiver. This is a wide receiver I've had ranked as my wide receiver 14 for a while now, and he still remains there as of the recording of this video, and right now he's going off the board on consensus as wide receiver 19. Now, a month ago, he was wide receiver 22, so the market's getting a little bit sharper, but nowhere near there. This wide receiver's name is Kupp. He has a brand new quarterback in Matthew Stafford this year, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of upside, not only for him, but the overall offense. Now, Kupp has been productive over the last couple seasons, but last year it was the touchdowns. He only ended up seeing 3 touchdowns after seeing 10 the previous year. If you balance those out to around 6, it's going to be nice. And the reason why he's always productive, even with Jared Goff, is he's finished back-to-back years inside the top 5 in yards after the catch. That yakability, baby. And now you bring in Matthew Stafford, who ranked 10th in catchable targets last year. Much better than Jared Goff, who is outside the top 15. Stafford ranked top 12 in a variety of different areas. In yards per attempt, in touchdowns percentage, in air yards last year, accuracy rating, deep attempts, true completion percentage. Top 12 in all these. He ranked better than Jared Goff in all of them except for attempts. Overall attempts, Goff ranked better. But that's not a skill thing. That's just a scheme and coaching thing. So now you put in Matthew Stafford, a better quarterback who's going to get more attempts, means more overall targets and upside for Kupp. And right now, Kupp is going on consensus after his teammate Robert Woods, which I think they're right next to each other in the rankings for me. But for some other guys, I don't agree with it. He's going after Chris Godwin. I don't agree with this. Chris Godwin has 2 wide receivers, let alone other pass-catching running backs added, Giovanni Bernard, Rob Gronkowski hitting his stride towards the end of last year. I don't agree with him going after Chris Godwin by any means. I mean, last year alone, Kupp had more targets per game and more receptions per game. The only thing Godwin had on him was touchdowns, and we already talked about how those are going to probably balance out for Kupp, who had a career low last year, even though he continues to see 140 targets a year. He's going after DJ Moore, which this one's a big head-scratcher. DJ Moore having a quarterback come in who has a better connection with Robbie Anderson, and who knows how good Sam Darnold is going to be this year. Who knows how many plays they're going to run. You have 120 targets back into the offense and Christian McCaffrey there. You have Terrace Marshall, who's going to steal a lot of red zone and touchdown usage in the slot. So I'm a little bit concerned with the upside for DJ Moore, but let alone compared to Kupp. So Kupp, my wide receiver 14, is a must-own wide receiver. His competition is surely Robert Woods, who I think they can both be top 20 receivers. We've seen Matthew Stafford support Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones as top 20 point-per-game receivers. Those guys got hurt and could never finish the season, but point-per-game receivers in Detroit. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about Tyler Higbee and 2 tight end sets. I'm not worried about Deshaun Jackson and the deep balls. They have their own roles. The one thing to worry about is if they run more 2 tight end sets, Kupp does come off the field in those often, meaning that he might only play some games 70 to 80% of the snaps instead of close to 100. But with no Cam Akers now this year, the likelihood of them running a lot of 2 tight end sets, they're still going to do it, but it goes down now that they don't have Cam Akers as comfortable of a running back in that scheme for Sean McVay. So must-own wide receiver number 1 is Mr. Kupp. Now, we kind of hinted at the second guy here. The second guy that we're going to be talking about. This guy is a rookie. We talked about him when I was talking during Kupp there. His name in Carolina is Terrace Marshall. I cannot stop drafting Terrace Marshall in drafts. He's going off the board on consensus right now on 6 different ADPs that Fantasy Pros gathers as the wide receiver 81. Now, if you look at some sharper ADP, he goes off the board as like 65 on Sleeper. That's not that fucking sharp. He goes off the board as like wide receiver 60 on Underdog Fantasy, where there's actually money being put in play. I'm well ahead of all of those ADPs. He's my wide receiver 53 right now. Look, this was a guy that was drafted in the 2nd round. He gets reunited. His head coach said, go and draft this guy. Reunited with his head coach from LSU and Joe Brady, offensive coordinator now with Carolina. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of college. He was drafted in the 2nd round this past year, and he's already going to be the starting slot receiver. There's not much competition there. It's going to be Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore on the outside. And Terrace Marshall, his final year at LSU, played in the slot, and he dominated in the slot. And I know what you're saying. McCaffrey, 120 yards out of the backfield. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson teamed up with Sam Darnold. All these guys, they're going to steal all the joy and upside and all the yards away from Terrace Marshall. you have to baseline your expectations. Me saying that Terrace Marshall is a must-own wide receiver does not mean he's going to finish top 10 as a wide receiver or top 20 or maybe even top 30, but he's going off the board on consensus outside the top 80 wide receivers right now. In your home league, there's a really good chance he doesn't get drafted until the 12th round, the 13th round, maybe even later. That's a massive mistake. He doesn't have to finish top 10 or top 20 to help you win a fantasy football league. I know he's not going to have a 1,200-yard season, although it's possible. But as a big slot plus receiver, I mean, this guy right now is the Chris Godwin, but bigger in the slot in terms of just being like 6'4". I mean, we saw last year, there was no McCaffrey, of course, but Curtis Samuel finished 27th as the wide receiver 3 in this offense, right? Had 97 targets. And I don't even think that Marshall's going to finish 27th, but if he finishes 40th, it's going to be a good value. And the big thing that Marshall has, the reason I like him this highly, is because in Joe Brady's offense, he was a touchdown machine. He posted 23 touchdowns in his past 19 games, more than 1 touchdown per game. In the Joe Brady year, he scored over a dozen touchdowns in the final year with Joe Brady. Brady knows how to use him in the red zone. In camp, he's dominating in the red zone drill, and he's in the slot, and even out wide some with Sam Darnold, and he's being the ISO guy, that Dez Bryant on the outside, one-on-one, the Calvin Johnson type role in the red zone, Devontae Adams for the Packers. That is fantastic to see and hear, because if he goes out there and has a 6-touchdown season, even if he is only having 650 yards, he's going to finish well above what I have him ranked as wide receiver 43 or 53, but insanely above the wide receiver 81 consensus ADP on Terrace Marshall. He's already a starting receiver. He has a massive role in this red zone offense already, and he's now reunited with his former head coach in college. And oh yeah, he's a massive talent in his own right. Go get yourself some Terrace Marshall. Do not leave drafts without him. Now let's get into my third must-draft receiver. He's been featured in another video a couple weeks back, but I don't think a lot of people got to see that one. And if you're still here, we do have a draft guide, my rankings. It's updated every single day. Top 200s. I personally like to use the tiers. There's player profiles on 200 players in there, key stats, a bunch of stuff. Check it out down below. Limited time only if you get it as an add-on bonus for free through Prize Picks if you sign up through them. But all the logistics on that is linked down below, and you can find out how to get the draft guide. So check it all out. Now, the number 3. Must-own wide receiver for me. And this guy is massive. He's my wide receiver 35. He's going off the board as wide receiver 53. So usually, I personally am like, okay, this guy's like a 7th or 8th round pick in my 12-team drafts. He always falls to the 10th, sometimes the 11th round. I love it. I love it so much. He's had a strong camp with this brand new rookie quarterback so far, and he is the only starting wide receiver. I'll tell you his name, Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, the veteran, who, yes, he's 30 years old, but he's one of the best in-shape 30-year-olds you'll ever find. And he was the only starting wide receiver in this regime for the Jacksonville Jaguars that they actually went out and got. They signed him to a 2-year, $14.5 million contract with $9 million in guaranteed money. The only guy that they decided to get. DJ Chark was a draft pick 3 years ago. Laviska Shenault was a draft pick last year. Not with this new regime under Urban Meyer and all the head coaches. And oh yeah, to make it even better, Marvin Jones is reunited with his Detroit Lions coach, Darren Bevel, who is now the offensive coordinator for Jacksonville. This is a good situation for Marvin Jones, who's scored 9 or more touchdowns in 3 out of his last 4 years, and he didn't even finish 2 of those years. This is massive upside for Marvin Jones. A beat reporter for The Athletic wrote this a couple of days ago. He said, targeted the most by far in camp has been big-bodied Marvin Jones. You love to see that. Marvin Jones just gets it done. He's consistently finishing as a top 35 wide receiver year in and year out, and for some reason he's going off the board as wide receiver 53 this year. Odd. I mean, right now in drafts, you're seeing Henry Ruggs go ahead of him, who's a second-year player who did not have a good fit last year. I like Henry Ruggs this year, but not that much. You're seeing A.J. Dillon and Elijah Moore. With now Elijah Moore waiting on an MRI. We'll see what happens there. But the rookie fever is getting hot right now in New York. You're seeing James Conner and Ronald Jones, guys in 2 or 3-headed backfields by committee. Stop this. Marvin Jones right now, I have him ranked as the number 1 wide receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you want to tell me otherwise, you can make your arguments for second-year player Laviska Shenault, who didn't show much in his rookie year. You probably can't make the argument for DJ Chark, who has a broken hand that he's rehabbing through right now. Not going to get to camp with his new rookie quarterback. Stunk last year, and it seems that Urban Meyer has him in a doghouse. For me right now, by about 10 spots, is Marvin Jones the number 1 receiver on this team. His pass finishes, again, 100-plus targets in 4 out of his last 6 years. In 2019 and 2018, he missed a combined 10 games, still scored 9 or more touchdowns in those years. It's just wheels up right now, and he has a solid quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Wheels up for my number 35 receiver. Going as the number 53, you can get him a couple rounds ahead of what consensus is, or just wait and get the insane value in Marvin Jones. If you're enjoying this video, hit the like button as we get into some honorable mentions. The first honorable mention, and these guys are must-own wide receivers. I find myself drafting them a ton, but they're not as, I would say, desired as the other guys. So this guy's name is Nico Collins. And the reason I like him so much, and if you saw my TikTok, if you're not following me on TikTok, Sal Vetri, we're putting out TikToks daily over there as well. It's a fun platform. We're trying to figure it out, but we're doing well, I think, so far. Check it out. But Nico Collins is my wide receiver 74. He goes off the board as wide receiver 84 in consensus. But here's the thing with Nico Collins. You see some people in the TikTok comments saying, oh, you know, wise guys, hey, did you forget about Brandon Cooks? Did you forget that Deshaun Watson's not going to be throwing the ball? No. He's an 18th round pick. I could be throwing the ball there, right? He's the already starting outside receiver. Oh, but the depth chart says he's 6th. Don't listen to depth charts in the preseason. They're not accurate until week 1. The coaches don't put input into the depth charts. Why would they say, oh, you're the 7th best receiver on the team? That makes a guy feel like shit. Why would they show up to the next day of practice if they think they're on the bubble or out of the bubble? You're 12th on the team on depth chart wide receiver. Why the fuck show up to practice? No, it's just what the PR department and the PR interns do for clicks and all this type of stuff. There's nothing actually to it. Right now, by far and away, Nico Collins is starting outside receiver. They had the 2nd highest trade up in NFL history in the 3rd round for Nico Collins. They gave up 3 picks. They swapped their pick. They gave up another pick for 2021 and a pick for 2022 just to get Nico Collins, who is a massive recruit coming out of high school. Went to one of the worst situations you can go to in Michigan, which is run first, and absolutely destroys any receiver. Just ask Donovan Peoples-Jones, who goes there. But the thing is, you're getting him in the 18th round. He's a starting receiver on the outside. And honestly, Tyrod Taylor, people are acting like Tyrod Taylor is the worst quarterback of all time. If he starts for the Texans, he's not. He can get the ball there. He can get the ball there for 40 yards per game. I mean, if you get 30 yards per game out of Nico Collins, that's about 520 yards in the year, 3 or 4 touchdowns. He's easily beating the wide receiver 84. I know it doesn't sound like a great year, but 1 or 2 weeks there, he's probably winning you a week or helping you win a week. And that's the absolute worst case scenario. He's 6'2", 216 pounds. He's definitely a red zone body, more so than a Brandon Cooks. He averaged 19.7 yards per reception, which was top 7 in college football history, top 7%. So yes, I think that Nico Collins in the 18th round or the 17th or the 16th, your last round of your draft, or the 20th is an elite pick. Because he's a starting receiver. You don't find starting receivers, number 2 receivers on teams with that type of athleticism and upside. In the 18th round, you just don't. But Brandon Cooks is on the team. Brandon Cooks can go and have 140 targets. It's still going to leave potentially 80 to 100 for Nico Collins. And I like that a lot. Our second honorable mention was actually, to be full disclosure, I had this video already recorded about a week ago, and he was actually one of the wide receivers I wanted to get to. But then he got hurt in camp, and now he's going to be out. They said he had groin surgery. He's going to be out until mid-September, probably going to miss 2 to 4 weeks. That sucks as a rookie. You miss out on some camp, which is important. Rashod Bateman, who I thought was the most talented receiver ahead of Jamar Chase in the NFL draft. Close, of course. It's not like Chase is bad. But he goes to the Baltimore Ravens, and immediately everybody just shits on him and says, oh, he stinks. Now, because of his injury, he's going as like wide receiver 65. I have him even with the injury around like wide receiver 60. I think he's the number 1 pass catcher on this team. But I do fully see and I'm aware that not having a camp as a rookie is brutal. It sets you back a decent amount. But Marquise Brown is dealing with an injury all of camp. He's an outside receiver. Mark Andrews is a tight end who I know has a nice connection with Lamar, but I think the most talented receiver on this team is by far and away Rashod Bateman. So if he returns and he can play, instead of 17 games, he plays even just 13, even if it's the full week or the full month. 13 games as a number 1 wide receiver on a team is good. But Sal, it's a run-first offense. I understand that. They've been run-first, the highest run offense in the past 2 years with Lamar Jackson. That's just the way that they're set up. But that run-first allows you to be efficient as a quarterback. He led the league in touchdown passes in touchdown percentage 2 years ago during his MVP season. People forget that because there's a deception of his running game, get an easy little dunk over the top. There's a lot of things you can do with the offense. Now he has by far his best passing offense once they're healthy. Hollywood Brown is now the wide receiver 2. He can be the outside stretch guy. You have Sammy Watkins in the slot, who's a massive upgrade from Willie Snead. Mark Andrews and Rashod Bateman, they have some offensive line improvements. Yes, this is a good offense and the best passing offense Lamar Jackson has ever been in his entire career. I think that leads to nice things for Rashod Bateman. If you're not familiar, Rashod Bateman profiles out like a Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, yards after the catch monster, great route runner, probably the best route runner in this past draft. So I'll take that upside. Yes, I am sad that he is now hurt. But of course, if he wasn't hurt, you would have had to spend like a 7th or 8th round pick. Now he's going to go from like wide receiver 40 in consensus or 45 to going down to like wide receiver 65 because of the injury. If you're there and he's on the board somewhere in the 13th or 14th round still in your draft, take him because he's going to be the wide receiver 1 on his team a couple weeks into the season. And people aren't going to want to spend draft capital on him because I don't want to put him on my bench or my IR spot. This guy's talent is unmatched. Go get yourself some Rashod Bateman later in the rounds. The injury might have actually created value. We don't like to see guys get injured, but it might have actually created some value for you. Now, instead of a 7th round pick, you could spend a 12th round pick and just miss out on a couple of weeks. So there's 3 guys, 2 honorable mentions, 5 total wide receivers that I think are must-own values in terms of right now in drafts. When they're there, usually I think they're massive values based on my rankings, which you can find in the Supreme Draft Kit down below. Limited time offer, a way to get it for free, thanks to our sponsors at PrizePicks. So thank you for tuning in. The must-own wide receivers. We got a ton of other videos on this channel. Fantasy Football 2021 playlist, tons of videos, drafts in terms of drafting from the 1 to 2 to 3 spot, rankings for positions. Just check it all out. There's so much stuff here in that playlist. I encourage you to like the video and subscribe if you have not already. And any questions, reach out to me on Twitter. Reach out to me down below. Anywhere that you can reach me, just hit me with a question. We're going to have football content, even preseason content, every single day until basically the Super Bowl at this point, since the season's going to be starting as well. So be sure to stay tuned for it all by smacking around and gently caress it, but smack it, the subscribe button. I appreciate you all. See you on the next one. Fellas, ladies, gentlemen, Peace out.